loyalty, Arthur. It ain't. I had a goddamn plan! You are my brother. You are my son. I was coming for you. They was talking. It was talking. We aren't thieves, John. We're fighting for something a bit like you. Only we're fighting for an idea, not just for ourselves. Dutch!
John?
You left me. You left me to die. My boy. I didn't have a choice. John, I didn't have a choice. Left me! You're just like me, John. You can't change who you are. Now! Who amongst you is with me? And who is betraying me? Well, Javier, think for yourself.
Give up, Dutch.
But I can't give up, neither. I can't fight my own nature. That's a paradox, John. You see?
Then I have to shoot you.
Well, when I'm gone, they'll just find another monster. They have to. Because they have to justify their wages.
Dutch was a lot of things. He was a leader, a mentor, a teacher, even a father to some. The gang was his family of misfits, people he found that didn't want to live how society decided, so he took them under his wing. So, how did everything go so wrong from there? Was it always meant to end that way? Or did something fall apart at some point and the gang broke apart into pieces because of it? Well, when you take away the golden glaze of nostalgia and you look at it objectively, the intentions aren't as wholesome as Dutch tries spinning them to be. In fact, maybe more than anything else, the Van der Linde gang could be described best as a cult, and Dutch isn't just their leader, but their god. But why him? To give a little context both into his leadership in the gang and his similarities to other cult leaders, let's first go into his backstory, or what we know of it. Dutch Van der Linde was born at some point in the 1850s, most likely, and his father died in the American Civil War. Growing up, he just had his mother to raise him, and the two of them had a really turbulent relationship, so he acted out and disobeyed her more often than not. At 15, he ran away, and thus marks the start of his life of crime. While he formed this life on the run, he found a love for philosophy and education, too. He educated himself from the ground up until he formed the ideals and philosophy behind the gang that he forms later, when he meets Hosea Matthews in his 20s. The two of them quickly grew close, and more members joined, little by little. The earliest ones were Susan Grimshaw, the future matriarch of the gang that runs the camp side of things, and Arthur Worgan, the main character of Red Dead Redemption 2. This was when the main little family formed, as Dutch and Susan formed a relationship, and then he also co-parented Arthur with Hosea, where the two taught him how to read, write, rob, shoot, and, of course, be a man of standards. At this point, and up until an undefined later date, the gang had a Robin Hood type of approach to their robberies. Any extra profits from their jobs would be given away to the poor and homeless along the streets. Dutch eventually met a new woman, a younger woman, Annabelle, and left Susan to pursue her instead. This new romance didn't last too long, however. Dutch killed one of the co-leaders and brothers of an ally gang to the Van der Linde group, the O'Driscoll boys, and the other leader, Colm O'Driscoll, killed Annabelle in retaliation, and thus started the years-long rivalry that we see in Red Dead Redemption 2 between the two most infamous and feared gangs in the game. Going back to Dutch, how did he manage this? What were the ideals that he supposedly taught himself that led to the formation of this gang with such loyal followers in the first place? Well, it can be summed up in one simple word: freedom. Dutch independence and freedom are essential to life, especially his way of life, and they are more important than anything else, even a person's happiness, well-being, or even livelihood. Even if it means breaking not only the cultural norms of the 19th century, but breaking laws too. And being hunted by police, bounty hunters, and a private detective agency until you lose all of your closest loved ones to them before eventually succumbing yourself. Sounds lovely. Frankly, Dutch sounds like a cult leader. But how deep do these similarities run? And how do real cult leaders act? There's the obvious and more well-known characteristics of cult leaders, like being very charismatic, well-spoken, and convincing, or having an inflated sense of self-importance that blends into narcissism. However, that could be any manipulative scumbag that you can meet in the street, not necessarily a cult. So what's the difference between that and a full-blown Kool-Aid drinking cult leader? There are a couple more traits that mark the difference. The main one is an authoritarian approach to leadership. What the leader says goes, and if you question them, or even disobey them, there's often harsh punishments to follow. For example, isolation, degradation, or even physical harm, or worse. It's an all-or-nothing mentality. You're either a good follower who obeys every single rule, no matter how minute, or you are an outsider and therefore an enemy. Any rules as a follower, cult leaders still often pin the blame on others if things go wrong, and will take all of the credit when things are going well. To add on to this, cult leaders also tend to make fake or dishonest promises that they don't follow through on. The main way to describe a cult leader, though, is this. Cult leaders act as a mentor, but they do so in a closed relationship instead of encouraging independence and boundaries. Instead, what they encourage and display are deviant traits and behaviors that don't align with society's traditionally accepted norms and rules. And I should note, many times cult leaders are diagnosed or theorized to have an array of mental illnesses or disorders. It's also important to point out that this doesn't mean that being mentally ill automatically makes you a bad person or more likely to be a cult leader or anything like that. But the behavior of cult leaders is often exacerbated by mental illness, if that makes sense. So squares are rectangles, but rectangles aren't squares type of stuff. The big difference is that cult leaders are intentionally leading people astray for personal gain through a variety of motives. The most common ones, though, are unsurprising. Money, obviously. Power, also obviously. Adoration, and for validation to improve their own self-esteem. What's crazy line up with almost every single one of these. And his personality traits and behaviors are nearly exact to the ones that I've listed here. Dutch is charismatic and famously well-spoken, at first. But upon a deeper level, he's arrogant, manipulative, shallow, paranoid, and power-hungry. He doesn't care about any of the people he apparently adopted into the gang, at least by the end of the second game. Even the woman he loved who stood by his side for decades and supported him, or a man he seemed to view as his son. But Dutch is not the only member of the Van der Linde gang. You cannot have a cult without any followers, so what about the other members of the gang? First, let's talk about how this gang even formed in the first place, and where Dutch and Hosea found everyone. After going through the whole list of the full-time members present in the games, over half of them owe their life to Dutch and Hosea in some way, whether it was through being fed and educated like Arthur, Lenny, and Sean, or actually being saved from, such as with Sadie, John, Javier, Mary Beth, and so on. Not to mention the multiple women he enticed into the gang while they were too young for him, through seduction. Ugh. It's also worth noting that when you take in both the historical context of the gang in the late 19th century, and when you compare it to in the game, the Van der Linde gang is by far the most diverse in both gender and race. Dutch probably open-mindedness, and it paid off in many people joining just for that, like Charles, Lenny, or Javier. The only members that didn't join the gang at an already disadvantaged position were Micah, Strauss, and Swanson, and maybe Bill. Not to mention that one Kieran, who was literally held hostage and indoctrinated. So we're already starting off to a pretty guilty start. But hey, Dutch positions himself as a guy with a bleeding heart and an open mind, so maybe he just likes helping people in need and taking them in. Do the members even act like a cult aside from Dutch? I mean, they don't not act like a cult. Cult follower behavior, from what I've researched, and I'll put all the links in the description, is characterized by the following. 1. Unquestioning commitment and loyalty to the leader and their philosophies, ideas, and rules. 2. Any dissent is punished and shunned by others. 3. Taking part in rituals and habits that put the followers in an altered or very intense states of mind to suppress doubts and critical thinking in their decisions. In real cults, this is most commonly used through drugs, meditation, intense labor and overworking, or intense religious experiences. 4. Giving the leader control over every facet of life, including things as small as clothing or speech, and things as important as personal finances and life savings. 5. Feeding into an us against the world mentality, where all members are considered special or more enlightened than people outside of the group. 6. A reluctance or fear of holding the leader accountable in their actions. 7. Using a the ends justify the means approach to behavior within the cult. 8. Cutting ties with anyone outside of the group and only socializing with people within the group. 9. Altering personality traits and behaviors to fit into the group more. And 10. Proving their worth by bringing in new members, making money in the name of the group, and spending extreme amounts of time either with or helping the group. When you look at this list, while thinking about the Van der Linde gang, some of the characteristics are more obvious than others. Anyone who's played either of the games could tell you that they definitely ensure complete loyalty to Dutch and punish anyone who even considers otherwise. They also have that us against the world mentality I brought up earlier, as well as the fear of pointing out his wrongdoings. Not to mention Dutch's very famous lies about needing money, how he has a plan, how all they have faith and make him more money, and then they can get to Tahiti or Australia or the West or whatever. However, some of it is a little more insidious. After all of the substances in Red Dead 2 are pretty common for the time, like alcohol, tobacco, cocaine gum, and the craziest they get is Reverend Swanson's heavy substance addiction. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of it specifically. That doesn't mean that the members aren't in an altered state most of the time. I'd argue that the work Dutch has them doing, like the robbing, the shootouts, the life on the run, is still incredibly intense, and the adrenaline and anxiety from it definitely keeps the members from having a clear mind when making decisions. Also, the only 2 characters shown to have relationships outside of the gang are Micah and his work buddies, and then Arthur with Mary. Everyone else almost exclusively socializes and bonds with other gang members, or for reasons related to the gang. No family, no other friends, no relationships, unless they're with other gang members. So, in nearly every single way, the Van der Linde gang behaves exactly like a cult, except for one thing. They're not religious. The short answer of this is not anymore. The longer answer is actually a bit more complicated. Technically, the definition of a cult, according to the APA Dictionary of Psychology, is religious or quasi-religious groups characterized by unusual or atypical beliefs, seclusion from the outside world, and an authoritarian structure. They tend to be highly cohesive, well-organized, secretive, and held non-members. The Van der Linde gang doesn't even try to seem religious, but it matches every other standard in the definition. Then again, nowadays, there are plenty of types of cults that either. For example, political or extremist cults like incel groups online or other certain eggshell-colored groups I'm really afraid to name here because I'm really trying to get monetized. Anyways, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, there's psychotherapy cults that promise to help you totally change your life and improve yourself. The best example that comes to mind is Jodie Hildebrandt's connections with Ruby Franke. There's also pyramid schemes and multi-level marketing groups. These are more focused on money than anything else, but they use very cult-like tactics when trying to get and keep their recruits. Another more recent one are New Age cults, which aren't religious in any traditional way, but instead focus on New Age spirituality and mysticism. For example, the Mother God cult. However, the one that matches almost exactly to the Van der Linde gang is a little less well known because they're very hard to catch. Family cults. Family cults are built from the dominance of a specific family member, especially a father or patriarch, instead of a philosophy or religious figure. Because it's limited to family and promotes isolation more than introducing new members, it's often glossed over or not spotted. Dutch has a very bad habit of framing himself to be the father to all the other members in the gang, especially the veterans that had been there for years. And also including the women that he hits on for no reason, even though they're half his age at least. This could have been more earnest at first, but by the end there is nothing remotely fatherly about him. His second gang in Red Dead Redemption 1 is only more proof of this. All Dutch wants from his followers is their loyalty, love, and labor. He doesn't care about their health, he doesn't care about their families or their dreams. They are resources, nothing more. And in my opinion, that is the exact definition of a cult leader. So that's all I have for the cultishness of Dutch Van der Linde and his gang as a whole. I think it's really... what on earth am I reading? Games in general, so if you want to see more of that, feel free to subscribe. I already have another Red Dead Redemption 2 video out about Arthur Morgan, so if you want to watch that, you can click the little link right now. Or maybe now. I honestly don't know, because I'm still just recording. I honestly don't know, because right now I just have the script. But you'll definitely see it by now, on the end screen. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, subscribe. It helps me out a lot, and I'm almost at 1,000, which is awesome. And thank you for watching.